Mother Nature took a turn towards Puerto Rico last year. Hurricane Maria attacked the island in September 2017, destroying roads and homes, and school students have been left with no classrooms to study in. According to the news reports, the storm shattered the island's power grid and ruptured its water supply. 1,200 buildings that served 350 million Puerto Rican students have been gone dark for weeks. Today, we invited Mr. Alexander Santo-Raman, who is a graduate student and instructor in the Department of English Education in University of Puerto Rico. He will share with us how Hurricane Maria has impacted the educational system in Puerto Rico, and what are the challenges that teachers and students encountered after the Hurricane Maria attacked the island.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Thank you for coming here to talk with us. We want to know, first of all, a little bit about yourself and what brought you here to Bloomington.
I am currently in my last semester. I'm finishing up my thesis. I was accepted as part of a fellowship being offered by the School of Ed and the universities in Puerto Rico. So my teaching experience is one semester doing the teaching practice in Mayagüez, which is on the west side, with 7th graders. And the last year and a half has been in higher education, so I'm teaching undergraduate students basic English.
So, Alex, we want to know also how was your experience during the Hurricane Maria, and if you could focus a little bit on the impact of the hurricane in the educational area. What is your perception about this natural disaster and how it affected the Puerto Rican educational system?
Sure. So after the hurricane, I think like about a month passed and the university opened again. When the university opened, immediately teaching was very strange because you had to pretend that classes could continue, when in reality what students face outside of the classroom was super different. So at the university we had some internet working, but it was very limited because not all areas had internet and everybody was trying to use the internet on campus, so it was super slow. So you would go to the classroom and you would start teaching and you would see immediately that students' motivation was kind of low, kind of down, because they are thinking about what's happening outside. And so the first 2 weeks were really focused on getting surveys out, getting information to students about resources they could have on campus that would kind of help them. Like there was one called Come Colegial, which was distributing food around campus and kind of helping people who didn't have access to it right away. We gave out surveys, students filled it out, they informed us if they had water or electricity back home. And the first thing that changed was like the existing syllabus that you had for the class had to be completely modified, because any assignments that required students outside of class to have access to internet or like even basic things like email was now a problem. It was very difficult for them, and so most of them only had access to electricity on campus, but as soon as they went back to the apartments they either had no electricity or no water. And if they went back home on the weekends, which was a little bit farther away from the university, they didn't have either of them. So it was assumed that if students left for the weekend during the school week, during that weekend they didn't have access to any type of communication. So you wouldn't be able to send like a last minute message saying like, hey, there's a change in like class schedule, or we're going to be doing this, because the message wouldn't get to students.
What do you know about what was happening in the other parts of the education system? So you're talking about what was happening in your specific context in the university. What was happening in public schools, in high schools? Do you know anything about that?
From what I know a lot of schools were closing down in Puerto Rico, and so there was this push to kind of centralize education in certain parts. Schools are closing down, they're trying to cram more teachers and more students in these schools. That was something that was happening before the hurricane. And I see how it helps in some situations, because if students didn't have access before, now if like the education is focused in one part, they could potentially carpool, have access in different ways. But in other ways, the quality of instruction and education is a little bit lower because you have more students in the classroom. It's harder for the teacher to kind of teach to all the students when there's more students. I would say that given these current problems that are already existing, the hurricane did make it worse. So now even more schools are closing down. They're trying to cram more kids into the classroom. There's more lack of funding. So I think the existing problems that were happening were kind of made worse through the hurricane.
In the beginning of your conversation, you mentioned the importance or the important role of connections or connectivity or the internet in education. Would you please talk more about this and how helping this area may help the education itself?
Yeah, so I think after the hurricane, one of the most important functions of the university was to kind of serve as a place for resources and communication. And so not only within the university, but where could you direct students outside of the university through the university? And so after the hurricane, resources were very limited. I think for a certain couple of days, they shut down the Wi-Fi on campus so that they could focus more on the administration using the internet so they could get like the processes going in the university. And then after a certain point, they would turn it back on so students could use it for leisure activities, homework, etc. And so some of the things that I tried to do in the classroom was, if students were able to have some internet on their smartphones, I created a group on WhatsApp as like an effort for them to kind of reach out, because I knew they were going back home and they didn't have much signal internet. But I figured if everybody's on the same group in WhatsApp, at least some people can relay the message. If they're close to each other, they can kind of drive a bit, let them know, hey, yo, this is what's happening. Or if anything would happen between them, they have like the WhatsApp as a resource for themselves.
In the classroom, you were using WhatsApp. Were you using any other mobile apps to support yourself in the classroom?
Yes, I often use PowerPoint. In terms of mobile apps, just WhatsApp. I know some other teachers use Facebook Messenger. I use other platforms like Kahoot. I think that's always a pretty fun one to do with students in the beginning of the semester through the syllabus. So I use Kahoot. Mostly it's PowerPoint, presentations, Microsoft Word, other platforms online like Moodle, Neo, Canvas. That's more dealing with like the course itself.
It might be a good idea now that to think about applications or technologies that will help specifically with the lack of connection in Puerto Rico, with those applications that can help connect people together.
Yeah, in terms of that, the only thing that I really implemented was just WhatsApp. That's the only thing that came to mind back in the classroom. But yeah, I think there should be a bigger strive towards apps that can kind of help that area. Especially if the power goes out, what do students do? They immediately go to their phone and start texting any way they can, saying like, yo, the power's out, this is happening, etc.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming to chat with us for a while. All the information was super valuable. Thank you.
Yes, you have provided many wonderful ideas that will help us and maybe support people there somehow in the area of education. We hope so. And we hope that all the community stand with Puerto Rico and help them out of this struggle.
Thank you.
We wish the best for Puerto Rico.
Thank you.
Thank you.